All right, problem number 1 tells you to refer to the table on page 351, and they want to know at what depth would the water pressure be 147 kilopascals. Well, if you look in that paragraph beside, they actually tell you that this is a direct variation problem, and one of the ways we know that, even though they may not, well, they actually do kind of say it, they actually give you the equation. Anytime you have y equals some number times x and there's nothing added or subtracted from it, for instance, it's a direct variation. If this had been y equal 9.8x plus 2, it would not have been direct variation, because direct variation is just in the form y equals some number times x. It's a short little equation. All right, so they give us the equation, so it's really easy to do this because we know that the water pressure is y, so that's the pressure in this problem, and the x represents the depth. And that's what they're asking us to find is x, because they want to know at what depth. So my x is missing. So what I've done basically is they've given me the y value because they gave me pressure, and if I look, pressure is y. So I'm just going to plug 147 in for y, and I'm going to get 147 equals 9.8 times x. And then just to solve this for x, all you have to do is divide both sides by 9.8, and you will get x equals 15. So that means that the depth was measured in inches, so it's at 15 inches. Okay? These are very common problems, and that you should expect to see some of them on an ACT or SAT test. Okay, for problem number 3, we're told that a real estate agent made a commission of $5,400 on a house that sold. So this is commission. And the sell price, I'll just put over here, is $120,000, sorry. Okay, at that rate, okay, so you think about it, he's getting paid a commission of like certain amount of percentage. It's not going to change. It's just all, it's the same all the time. That's how that sort of thing works. So we know this is in the form y equal kx, and what we're trying to do is find out what is the k, what is the rate. K represents the rate, percentage rate that he earns commission. Okay, so they want to know at this rate, what's he going to earn on a house that sells for $145,000. Now, I can do this a couple of ways. They didn't ask me what the rate was. I could find it. That would be K. The thing about these equations are I could plug in basically the X here is the sell price, okay, and the Y is the commission. I could plug in this X and this Y and find K, and then write that equation with a K in it and plug this in for the new X and find it. But there's a faster way to do that, and that's to use proportions. That's the thing, is that these direct variation equations can be worked with proportions much of the time, and so that's what we usually do unless they want to know what was the rate. They didn't ask us to tell them that. They just wanted to know what his commission would be. So all we're going to do is we're going to make proportion, which is a fraction equal a fraction. And what I'm going to do is on both of these fractions, I will put one of the things on top. I'm going to choose to put the commission on top on both fractions. And on the bottom of both fractions, I'm going to put the sell price. Okay? Because they occur at the same rate. And since this is a direct variation thing, we know that we can do this. Okay, so let's figure out what we need to put where. If I'm putting the commission on top, he makes $5,400 in commission off of a $120,000 house, right? So what's missing? What's missing is how much commission. So it's the question mark is the missing part, which really I should just call it X here. What's missing is the commission that he would make off the selling price of $145,000. So as long as you set both fractions up the same, you could have even put the sell price on top and the commission on the bottom. As long as you do the same thing to both fractions, you're okay. Well, since it's a proportion, all we have to do is cross multiply. We're going to take 5,400 times 145,000, and I'm just going to do that in my calculator as I make the video here. That ends up being 783 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. I have 783 million. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, is equal to 120,000 times x. And so if I want to find out what x is, the missing commission, all I've got to do is divide both sides by 120,000, and I'll get my answer. And so I'm just going to put that in my calculator since I still have that number. So I'm going to divide that 783 million divided by 120,000, and that's going to be 6525. So x equal 6525. The commission he would earn is about $6,525, and that actually kind of makes sense if you think about $5,400 for $120,000. That seems reasonable to expect for $145,000. All right, this problem number 5 would be easier to figure out had they told you which of the 5 by 8 rectangle. Basically you got a map, you got a field that's 280 feet long, and it says it's represented by a 5-inch by 8-inch rectangle. It would have been nice had they told you that is 5 inches long and 8 inches wide is the representation. That's what I'm going to assume anyway, because usually you give length by width. Though I've never seen anything written that that's the way it's done. It just seems like that's how problems do it from my experience. So what we're dealing with here is we just basically got a scaled drawing of that field. That's like similar triangles that you did in geometry. So if I call the missing width x, I can solve this with a proportion. I can say 280 matches up with 5 the way that x matches up with 8. I could cross multiply and I'd get 5x is 280 times 8. Okay, so if you multiply that out, and again, try to do the algebra on this. If you have trouble setting it up, watch it, set it up, then solve it, then check your work. Don't copy this down. You're not going to learn anything that way. That's not using the videos properly. So I'm getting this number. So if I divide both sides by 5, I should get my my width, and I'm getting a width of 448, and the book has the answer is 175. So I must have assumed wrong. And let's do this. Then that must mean that maybe 5 is the width and 8 is the length. Let's try it that way. Let's say, okay, that's not how they meant for us to do it, because that didn't match the book answer. Again, do you see the confusion? How are you supposed to know here? I don't know. So if we switch it and we say, okay, well then they must have meant that the length was represented by the 8 part and the width was represented by the 5 part, we would say 280 matches with 8 the way that x matches with 5. By the way, if there were a problem like this on a test, I would tell you, a width of 5 and a length of 8. I would give you that information because I just kind of think that this is kind of ridiculous the way this was worded. But anyway, we can solve it. We cross multiply, we get 8x is 280 times 5 this time. And so that's going to be 280 times 5 is 1,400. And if we divide both sides by 8, let's see if we get the right answer this time. 175. So in this problem, they meant for the width to be 5 of the similar triangle and the length to be 8. It's represented by 8 in the scaled drawing. And again, it would have been nice had they told you that, right? Okay, in this problem, you've got the Wildlife Service in Africa bans 600 flamingos, and then at a later time they catch 1,000 birds, and 48 out of the 1,000 were banded. So they want you to use that to estimate how many total birds are in the flock. The assumption is that, the 48 out of 1,000 represents kind of the proportion, you see that word proportion, of birds out of the total flock. So we know that they caught 48 let's put the number of banded on top out of the totals, okay? So 48 out of 1,000 that they caught were banded. Now, they banded how many? They banded 600, so 600 goes on top, and what they're asking you to do is find the total in the flock. So this 48 out of 1,000 represents a sample of the total, and this 600 over X represents the actual flock itself. Just say, okay, well, if 48 out of 1,000 are banded, that means that we can kind of estimate how many total birds there are using that fraction. So we could say 48 times X is 48X if we cross multiply. 600 times 1,000 would be a 6 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, so that's what, 60,000. So if you divide both sides by 48, we will find out our estimated total. Again, I'm hoping you're doing all this math yourself and not copying it, because you are not learning anything if you are copying it without trying it first. And I'm getting X is 1250. I think I mismultiplied. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, in the calculator, I've only put 4 zeros, so let me redo that. 60,000. No, it needs to be 600. It needs 5 zeros, and I only put 4 up here, didn't I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need another 0 there. Let me get that in the calculator correctly. Okay, so if we divide by 48, we get 12,500 total. Now, how did I know that that number was probably not right? I didn't look at the book. I am looking at it now, and now I have the right answer. But the reason I knew that couldn't be right is if they caught 1,000 and 48 were banded, I know the total population couldn't be 1,250, because, you know, that can't be, right? We know that there were 600 birds banded, and that is not the same kind of proportion of banded to total. If I were to come up with 1,250 birds, that's just barely more than they even caught for their sample. So I knew that I had done something wrong, and what I had done is not write enough zeros down, so that's why I was getting an answer that wasn't right. So use things like estimation like that to help check your work so that you can catch errors too.